Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Joe Palmetto Law Show. If there's anybody in the chat room, feel free to stop in. I did have a guest planned who backed out at the last minute, so now I don't have any guest. But I'm still going live because I said I was going to go live. I don't know if I'm going to pull anybody in, but if anybody's there and wants to ask me some questions, this is going to be a session where Joe answers anything and everything, which is a regular part of my show that I want to incorporate. So you can ask me mainly about legal stuff, but anything that you want to ask me, period. It's still possible that my guest will chime in, but not yet. Let's see. No guest yet. So if you see here, live chat. Hello, everybody. Come on in. My channel is still too small, so I can't tease my live ones on I can't tease on YouTube. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let me shoot you guys my number, John. Or whoever wants to call in. Hold on one second here. Do 412-593-4529. And I am ready when you are. If you want to call in, John, feel free to call in. Otherwise, I will talk about thoughts on YouTube censorship. You can also try this number, John, or just shoot me a couple of messages in here. Thanks for joining me, John and Soulseye. You guys, I met you on Iggy's channel, Iggy MB 5679. Check his channel out. He spent some time in prison and jail, and he learned a lot from that. So he can tell you about those experiences. He's got a prison talk channel. It's awesome. So Jules, Soulseye, okay, here we go. Hello, John, is that you?
Yes, it is, Joe.
How you doing?
Doing pretty good. I wanted to know if I could just, I'm going to talk about, what you're saying, the rights and stuff like that, but I just want to know if I could say a quick something about them, and then I could ask you the question about them.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
So I view the feminist movement as the women taking the rights from the men, and then when the kids go to school and they want to be homosexual or not be influenced by a holy book of some kind, so they can be ripped out of the home sometime, but also they can they're children, so they can't make decisions for themselves. So the government's going to obviously step in, and so also I think on the free speech that the Democrats want the liberals want us to have our speech violated because it's not politically correct. And I view the Republicans as wanting us to go to the government to protect our speech. But I view both as the citizens taking a God-given right and giving it to the government.
Okay, I got some comments on that. Go ahead, John.
I view the YouTube, that if we complain about the YouTube and the free speech on YouTube, that basically we won't be able to go out and make our own platform later on, because we'll all have to follow a certain amount of guidelines later because we're complaining to them about what they can put on their platform and what they can't put on their platform.
I got you.
I view it as like a trick to get us to where we can't make a platform. But I mean, does any of that sound crazy to you, or?
No, I got some comments on all of that. I mean, you know, as far as, I mean, you know, talking about, well, first I wanted to say, John, I want to keep this mostly legally focused, okay, in the future, but I'm going to go ahead and tackle some of your questions for now, okay? So,
yeah, just how the rights are, like how they can take the rights from the people. I was just wondering, is there anything that we could do to prevent it?
Yeah. So, you know, as far as feminism is concerned, you know, there's been a long history of feminism in this country, and it's honestly, in my opinion, it's done a lot of really good things. Okay, that this country needed, giving women the right to vote, equal rights in the workplace, et cetera, et cetera. I do think, you know, what you're seeing now is a little bit of in the media some pushback. Well, I don't want to say pushback, but it's you know, the feminism has become such a big movement, and the media is behind it, and everybody's behind it. Okay, and my issue is that there's not, and this goes to the point that you made, is that there's not enough focus on the family, right? And focusing on the positive things about having a family and having a nuclear family, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, the decisions that need to be made in a family with a child, it should be between both the mother, okay, and the father. So yeah, in some respects, I think feminism has gone too far. Overall, I think it's been a positive movement, but there are some wacky aspects of it out there that I think push a little too far, and you see a lot of that in the media. Now, let me jump to your other part about the free speech. You know, and I think what you know, YouTube has opened the internet in general. So the internet in general, John, has opened up new platforms, right, for individuals to look at me. I'm on YouTube making a channel, right? It's opened up a new platform. You know, you go back 50 years. You got two news channels, okay, who 2 or 3 news channels and a couple of newspapers, and that's where everybody gets their news from. Then you get into the 90s, you get cable. Okay, all right, there's a couple of more channels. So now you're talking a couple of TV channels, couple of newspapers and radio. You get into the 2000s, all of a sudden, websites, YouTube, it's crazy. Okay, it's the news is crowdsourced. Okay, in 2019, the news is crowdsourced. And I think what you're seeing now is well, the tech companies, okay, including YouTube, are extremely powerful, right? And all this new speech has been opened up on their platforms. Okay. At the same time, you know, I am of the opinion that the tech companies have a liberal slant. Okay. So to see them, you know, banning conservative speech here and there, all right, it's disturbing. It is disturbing. And it's in the name of political correctness. Now, here's the thing with that, though, John, is these companies have the freedom to do whatever they want to do. All right, these company and so you're like the First Amendment, and I may do some more First Amendment stuff on here. The First Amendment only protects your speech from the government. It doesn't protect your speech from private outlets like Facebook, Google, you know, Twitter. They can do what they want. Just like if you owned a company, John, you could fire who you want. You could tell your employees that they can't talk about certain subjects. You can do that. Do you want to do that? Do you want to do that as a business owner? Okay, probably not.
If I may interrupt.
Yeah.
What I meant is okay, the government, like you said, has no regulation of the online platform. The First Amendment is to government entities.
Right.
I'm not like the smartest tool in the box. I can't use those big words.
You're pretty smart. Yeah.
What I'm saying is since they don't have, like, okay, we all know that the government pretty much owns Google and like YouTube, Facebook, and all that. We know that they're said to be private entities, but with different programs and stuff. But anyways, like I said, I know you want to get into the legal aspect.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is since the government doesn't have, jurisdiction online, that this censorship could be a way that the people would complain that there would be governmental regulation on the platforms, on any platform, so that way we have our free speech on there. That's what I was asking you. Do you see it as a way that it's a way to get their hands, like where they're not?
It could be. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It could be. You know, the funny thing is,
protect ourselves from that.
The funny thing is there's a lot of YouTube personalities who are calling for government intervention, and it's kind of funny because they are more or less conservative, and now they're asking for government intervention. I don't think the government's going to do anything like that. I don't. They could. I don't think it'll happen. Look, if the government wants to do it and both houses of Congress and the president get on board, there's not too much that can stop it. I'll tell you who can stop it is the United States Supreme Court, because the Congress and the president cannot put unreasonable restrictions on people's speech. And given are you still there, John? No? Well, oh yeah. So given, yeah. That's fine. Given the current makeup of the Supreme Court, honestly, in my opinion, I think even if the government tried to regulate the tech companies without a really good reason for doing it, if their reason is, conservatives online are saying, oh, the tech companies are censoring us. But then the liberals are saying, oh, the tech companies aren't doing enough, right? They're out of control. It's like they both are saying different things, but they both are arguing for regulation. All right. So let's say the government passed regulations on the tech company. The United States Supreme Court has the last say. Okay. Any law that the Congress passes, you need both houses of Congress. Okay. Pass a law. The president signs it. The Supreme Court has judicial review. All right. So the Supreme Court, and right now it's a conservative court, they're gonna, they could strike that law down. Outside of that, John, what power do the people have? I mean, the people can get out there and protest. They can protest on YouTube, they can protest online, et cetera, et cetera. Given the history in this country, our government, I mean, really, you look at other governments around the world, okay, and they pass a lot of restrictions on free speech. And even when we have very liberal governments, this country, the United States Congress, generally does not pass limitations on free speech. So I know there's a lot of chat about it. I don't think it's going to happen. All right. On top of that, so you made the point that YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, okay, I don't believe that the government's necessarily pulling strings, okay, but they work together. They work in league. All right. So what can people do about that? Well, if YouTube's censoring you, you go to another platform. If Facebook's censoring you, you go to another platform. And I believe we are starting to see that happen. That's how the free market works. The free market is the answer, okay, to the tech companies censoring on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. The free market is the answer. And there are new platforms that are popping up. There's, Minds, there's BitChute, there's a whole bunch of other ones. You can go on Reddit. There's tons of new social media that's coming up. Okay, think about it. Okay, YouTube and Google and Twitter, these are like the first of their kind, right? Just like if you go back, 100 years, Standard Oil, started out and was the only big oil company, right? And yeah, the government broke up Standard Oil, but over time, other oil companies popped up, all right, and started to challenge Standard. Okay, et cetera, et cetera. And farther in the future, you have a multitude of oil companies. I think you can see something similar. And the thing with online is anybody, like any tech nerd out there, okay, I don't want to say any, but there are so many tech nerds out there who can create a platform, okay? And once it catches fire, I think YouTube and Facebook are going to have to rethink their policies. And so honestly, so number one, to answer your question, I know there's a lot of talk about it. I don't think the government's going to step in to regulate these companies or speech online. I don't think it'll happen. And if they did, I think the Supreme Court would probably take issue with it. A lot of people don't like some of the Supreme Court decisions. I get that, but they're sort of the last guardians of our freedoms. Okay. And they don't always, they go one way or they go another way, but they're the last line. I do think that an unreasonable law, the Supreme Court would strike down. So I don't think our Congress is going to do it anyway. But as far as the censorship on YouTube online, look to other platforms. I believe Jordan Peterson's starting a platform called ThinkSpot. So I think there's going to be a lot of new platforms out there that will eat away at the current tech monopoly.
Okay, I just got one last legal question. When you hear YouTubers say that because you said that there's no governmental regulation online and most of them would have to go to the Supreme Court. So when we hear those YouTubers say, my account's getting banned or this, I'm getting strikes or this, my intellectual property, can they really go to a lawyer offline and actually do anything since they don't have regulation? And
no.
Go ahead and hang up if you want me to.
No, you're good, John. I do want to talk some more, see if anybody else wants to talk, but yeah, I don't want to say that. I mean, they may be able to, whoever's calling, just hold on. John, yeah, they actually, here's the thing. When you go on a platform like YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, you're accepting all of their terms of service. Okay. So if they want to knock you off, they can pretty much do what they want. I'd have to study this area of law more. I'm not going to sit here and say that there would be absolutely no recourse, but it would be tough. It would be tough.
I understand.
It's possible that the government, I mean, it's the government has to get involved, right? I mean, there are sort of interpretations of the Constitution, et cetera, et cetera. I think that a creative lawyer could bring a case under. Okay. I don't know. Let me put that one in my back pocket, John, and think about it. And the next time I go live, I'll try to get you an answer. Put it up in the chat.
That's good.
Put it up in the chat for me.
I'll just hang up. It's cool. Thank you for answering my questions.
You bet. Thank you, John. Okay. All right. We got some more. Should be able to have platform. Okay. Here's a question. Marco Leota. People like Nick DiPaolo and Alex Jones should be able to have a platform on popular sites. I've never heard of those other ones. Censorship of the right-wing talk show and comics isn't free speech. Yeah, I think what you're saying, should be able to have a platform on popular sites. Yeah, again, it's just that, so there are some laws in place that regulate the companies, all right, and who they can, like, let's this is pretty good questions that I am gonna have to do some research on. For instance, there are laws, there are interpretations of the First Amendment that require certain businesses who hold themselves open as public forums. Okay, so certain businesses hold themselves open as public forums. They do have to follow certain laws, and that's generally anti-discrimination type stuff. Okay, they can't discriminate based on race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, etc. Okay, outside of those protected categories, all right, they have to accommodate disabilities, but outside certain protected categories, businesses can basically do what they want as far as, you know, I don't want to say letting people in. That's not a good analogy. But you know, for instance, let's say you own a billboard. Okay, you own a billboard. You don't have to put a sign up on the billboard that you don't like. You own that billboard. Okay, you don't have to put a sign up that you don't like. All right. And that's essentially what you're seeing with Facebook and with YouTube and with Twitter is they're deciding that they don't like certain signs, okay, that are going up on their platforms. For instance, Alex Jones. All right. So they're taking him off. They are private companies and they can do that. Unless they're doing it on a certain discriminatory basis, he is not going to have much recourse. There may be some other creative arguments out there that I'm not thinking of, but we haven't seen many lawsuits in this area yet. So it's a very undisturbed area of law. I do believe that YouTube or Google has some lawsuits against them for censoring certain conservative personalities, videos, shows, etc. So we're probably going to see this area of law be developed more going forward. But again, private companies, they just have a lot of leeway in what they can do. If they're not violating certain anti-discrimination statutes, they can basically do what they want. And if their argument is that the content that these individuals make is inflammatory for one reason or another, again, there's not that much that can be done legally. We'll have to follow some of the lawsuits. You know, I think Prager University has a lawsuit. I'm going to look them up and see exactly under what theory they brought that lawsuit. But in the long run, in my opinion, the answer truly is different platforms, creating different platforms. And you know, there's been there's this BitChute out there. I'm not even really sure what it is, but I clicked on it. And a lot of YouTube personalities are going to BitChute, and they're taking massive audiences, which is kind of funny here because what's happening is YouTube is almost banning these people too late, right? So these individuals come on, build these massive followings, and then Twitter kicks them off or Facebook kicks them off. Well, now they have 1 million people that they can take to a new site. That's going to make that new site stronger. It's going to give that new site a massive audience. And what we may see over time is, you know, the existing social media companies may take on, you know, a left-wing bias, and the new ones take on the right-wing bias, and the old ones are where the left-wingers go, and the new ones are where the right-wingers go. And honestly, in the end, I think it creates more division in this country because everybody's going to go down their own little rabbit hole and only move farther apart instead of having their ideas clash together. So it's going to be really interesting. Honestly, in my opinion, YouTube has actually been very fair. They may demonetize someone, but they leave them up. Certain people they have banned outright, but in my opinion, they haven't gone as far as Twitter or certain other platforms. I really think YouTube is making a really good effort to allow creators to voice their opinions. Now, they may lose monetization, but they can still go online and they can still make money in other ways. Solzai. contacting advertisers, going to a new site. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're upset, there's a lot of things that an individual can do. I'm actually surprised that more of these creators haven't asked for some sort of protest. But honestly, I mean, here's my opinion though, is like Twitter and Facebook are like YouTube. In my opinion, YouTube is where they really get their message out. Okay. And they can spread their message through YouTube alone and these video type platforms. To me, Facebook and Twitter are almost inconsequential. I mean, they're becoming less and less consequential, less and less. I don't like Twitter. I don't know where I'm skeptical that Twitter will be around in 10 years. I think Facebook, a lot of millennials don't even like Facebook. Okay, so I'm 36 years old. It's my generation and older generations who are on Facebook. Yeah, Facebook's gaining new users overseas or amongst older people, but the younger generations, they don't even like Facebook. They're on Instagram, which isn't very political. So what are we moving towards? In my opinion, we're moving more towards YouTube video centric platforms like YouTube, perhaps like BitChute, some other new ones that are going to be popping up, video centric platforms, and then image based platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I don't know. I mean, Facebook owns Instagram, so it's not like they're going anywhere. But Twitter is kind of crappy in my opinion. I mean, it's good for like right in your face news, or say right in your face news, or I like it for sports. I love Twitter for sports. That's about it. Okay, Yolanda, I see you jumped in. Do you want to come on and talk a little bit about what we were going to talk about? Let me see if she's here. Okay. Yeah, it's funny, Solzai. You see the thing with the advertisers, the contacting advertisers. I think, well, number one, I've seen the left use that tactic more so than the right. But I also think that the advertisers, that there's becoming some resistance or fatigue to that type of thing. Not to say that it can't still be effective, but there was a campaign to take out Laura Ingraham, and a lot of her advertisers stuck around, and then even when she lost them, she gained some new ones. So it's interesting. The thing with YouTube is the reason they take down a lot of this controversial content is because their advertisers don't want to be associated with that content, which I find kind of strange, because the advertisers, I don't know if YouTube allows the advertisers to pick who they advertise with, and then they could just, if they want to just, go on, they just want to advertise on, what is it, the unwrapping or the kids shows, go ahead, do that. Leave the other stuff alone. S-Led, you asked me to wish your nephew, okay, all right, yeah. That you got me there. You got me there. Yeah, I'm not cool with that one. So let's see here. Does anybody else have any questions? And if Yolanda, if you're there, I'd love to have you on to talk about what we were going to talk about. John, I'm trying to get there so I can put up some posters. I'm trying to get there, man. It's what you're looking at right now is some free advertising. So I've spent a little money on advertising, but you're right. I want to get there. Um, I'll tell you what I want to do with this show because I'm learning from and everybody what topics we find interesting. I'm going to focus more on the First Amendment, and I'm going to get everybody some more answers on that and the free speech issues. There is a lawsuit out there against Google relative to this issue, and if that lawsuit is successful, and I believe it's Prager University, if that lawsuit is successful, it could create a blueprint for other creators to go after these tech companies in that circumstance. Well, that's a good point too, Soulseye. That's a very good point. Is these creators, they get banned and then they can create a video about getting banned, and then that video is going to get twice as many clicks as their other videos. That's absolutely true. So yeah, well, the funny thing about that, so I mean, I believe that they get demonetized, but are they actually losing money? That's a better question, right? So they get demonetized because my understanding is, well, the large creators do make pretty good money off of their YouTube monetization, but still they make much more off of their other forms of monetization generally. Like the YouTube monetization is not going to be their only source of income, right? They can sell merchandise. They can ask, like the direct donations. A lot of them use Patreon, etc. They use a bunch of stuff to get their donation, to make money. Not to mention, they can funnel traffic where they want once they become YouTube influencers. Go to my website, go to this. Some of them provide special content just on Patreon alone. So they may be demonetized, but it doesn't mean they're losing money, which is kind of funny. Let's see. I got a couple of people in here. Anybody else have some questions? How about give me suggestions for any other topics that you would like to hear me discuss in the future. Anybody at all? Marco Leota says, I need a production assistant. You're right, man. You're right. Right. Yeah. Soulseye, you're exactly right. There's some of these creators, they do live shows and you see them make $2,000 in less than an hour. Absolutely. If they have a large enough audience with what's it called? Super Chat. I mean, Super Chat, they just rake it in. Ching, 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 ching. And if you think about things like Patreon, right? Even if someone's donating $1, $1 a month, well, you get 1,000 of those, you get 2,000 of those. I mean, we're talking creators that have 1 million followers. So it's really pretty wild. But when it comes to free speech, I think honestly, I was thinking of adding to this show. I'm gonna dig into the First Amendment. I mean, it's gonna be really nerdy, but we spend a lot of time in law school, okay, just learning about the First Amendment. At least I did in my constitutional law class. It was almost a full semester, which is, when you think about law school studying, it's a lot of time. Now, some of that is sort of flushed out of my brain, but I'm thinking of making that a dedicated part of this channel. And, we may be able to figure some things out here that other people haven't, because the internet is it's a whole new forum. And speech previously, it wasn't as wide. I mean, the internet's like the wild, wild west. And for a long time, it was the wild, wild west of speech. But now you're seeing these huge monopoly companies coming in, and they're starting to regulate that speech when it used to just be really dispersed. And there's still a lot of freedom on the internet, but the major platforms are getting most of the traffic, right? So YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, these platforms get much of the traffic, at least the social media traffic. But you can still run your own website, right? Guys like Alex Jones are still out there, running their own website. So it's not like they're taken down completely. All right, so if anybody have any more questions, otherwise I'm going to log off for tonight. I planned on doing a special show, but my guest wasn't able to make it, which is fine. Hopefully I can have her on again later. Yeah, I agree, Souls. A lot of people don't understand what the First Amendment actually covers. It's it's a big issue right now, so some people are getting the hang of it. I guess the important thing to say, that the important thing to understand with the First Amendment is, with the Constitution in general, is that the Constitution restricts the power of the government, and it restricts the power of the federal government and the state governments. The federal government and the state governments. The Constitution tells them what they can and can't do. That's essentially what the Constitution does. And whatever they can't do, where it doesn't explicitly say that they can't do something, then the government can do it. Okay, so the government does have a lot of power, but our Constitution does restrict that power in certain designated areas, speech being one of them. So it's very complicated. It's dynamic. What happens over the history of free speech is that the United States government or individual state governments have passed laws restricting certain types of speech. And then the Supreme Court will look at it and say, you can do that or you can't do that. And we have the type of Supreme Court that has generally come down on the side of free speech. But the important thing to remember is certain types of speech are more protected than others. So political speech is extremely protected, right? Like the government cannot crack down on political speech because they would have a direct interest in doing that, right? Let's say you have a conservative government in power that doesn't want liberals out there saying certain things, right? They would pass a law to ban that type of language. That would be, the government trying to restrict speech. And the Supreme Court would step in and say no. So, but political speech is very, very protected, whereas commercial speech is not as protected, right? Advertising, the government can and has regulated commercial advertising. So commercial speech is not absolute. There's other forms of speech as well that are not absolute. But the one that most people are concerned about, and it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that's going on online relates to this, is political speech. Yeah, I may do that, Souls. I may do that on what hate speech is very. It's in the United States. Hate speech is a very high threshold. Okay, so other nations like Great Britain, even Western developed democracies, they have hate speech rules that may be like down here. Okay, but in the United States, the bar is way up here. And like I was telling John, in my opinion, that's because our Supreme Court is very protective of speech, even things like hate speech. I mean, it can be a disgusting, vile thing that someone is saying, but our court tends to allow it to be said. And it's a strong belief in the marketplace of ideas.
shine light on a bad idea, or you attack it with a better idea. You don't shut it down. And I tend to agree with that position, because I think suppressing that speech creates a counter reaction, and can really lead to getting into some bad places. Yeah, I consider myself, Soulseye, as well, to be an independent of sorts. There are certain things I agree with liberals on, and certain things that I that I'm more conservative on. Right, the counter reaction. I mean, what I put in my last video, I think, is a good example. Is in the 1500s, and this was when a lot of speech, don't quote me on that century, okay, but 1600s, I believe it was 1500s. And this is when this is when the Enlightenment, right, and the scientific revolution, when a lot of the countries in Europe are starting to come up with our modern concepts of political organization. Anyway, Martin Luther goes and posts nails his declaration to a Catholic church, right, on the door of a Catholic church, in direct contravention to the rules of the Catholic Church. Okay, for centuries, if you spoke out against the Catholic Church, you were a heretic. You disagreed with their ideas. You said certain words, just certain words, you would be killed. You would be hung. I mean, we're talking, this was the status quo. Okay, if you went against the church in a public and open and direct way, okay, the church would the government and the church would just kill you, okay, or make you go away. So Martin Luther stands up to the church in that time, and they tried to get him, and there were reformers before him that they had killed. Okay, but by Martin Luther's time, he posted these to the wall. He had enough political support, okay, that he was able to escape being killed by the church. Okay, that's a classic example of the government, okay, trying to suppress speech. All right, and the Catholic Church didn't stop there. They didn't just let the speech happen, right? I mean, we're talking wars of religion for the next 150 years, right? Protestantism pops up in Catholic areas, and the Catholic Church says, no, like, we're going to kill you. Like, you can't just be Protestant. So, I mean, to me, that's the consequences of suppressing speech, right? That's one of the consequences of suppressing speech. The more you suppress it, okay, the more, it can create a counter reaction, especially in Western societies where people really truly value our rights, our God-given rights, like John said. Many people consider our rights to be God-given rights, and so to stamp those out in one way or another, I just don't think is productive, no matter how bad you think that speech is. I mean, counter that speech with counter bad ideas with good ideas. Counter bad ideas with good ideas. I mean, the civil rights movement in the 1960s, Martin Luther King, he was an amazing speaker, amazing protest. Like, he countered racism and bad ideas with good ideas. Right. I mean, in England, the Church of England. I mean, that's one of the reasons we have the United States today, is because many Scottish, Irish, and even Englishmen were fleeing Great Britain because of religious persecution. I mean, it's just, and we have in this country freedom of religion and freedom of speech. And honestly, they go hand in hand, because to a large degree, speech is freedom. Religion is speech. Religion is speech. Speech is religion. So you can't have free speech and really not have freedom of religion. I don't think it's possible. So thank you everybody for hopping in. I'm going to make this a sort of regular thing going forward. I'm going to hop out for now. Sorry, our the intended show didn't go down. And yeah, John, it's a slippery slope, man. It's a slippery slope. And, in France, they've created some rules where Muslim women can't wear the burqa and certain, I'm not even sure if they can wear it in public. And that's a slippery slope. I mean, a different government gets in power, they could turn that around on Christians, on Buddhists. So to me, that's the funny thing is, a lot of these liberals are backing what the tech companies are doing. And it's like, well, yeah, because right now the tech companies are on your side but what if that changes, and who knows what it's going to be like 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. So you can't set bad precedents, right? The principle must come first. The principle of free speech must come first. And if you protect that principle, okay, it will regulate conduct on both sides for future generations. But once you chip away at that principle, okay, then both sides, okay, one side might be in power now, and then they can use it to attack that other side. In the future, though, that coin could get flipped, and it almost certainly will get flipped at some point in time. So that's why law, the rule of law itself is important, and why upholding free speech and upholding the Constitution is so important in protecting these principles first. You have to hold on to these principles, or it can lead everyone down a dark path. And I do see some things happening in this country right now that are disturbing. And in my opinion, no matter what, though, the principles have to be protected first. So, all right, I'm going to sign off, everybody. John, Solzai, Marco, thanks for coming in. I was going to have Yolanda on. She wasn't able to make it tonight, but maybe another time. So thanks everyone for sitting in on my stream. I'm going to research I'm going to do some research on legal recourse, okay, for someone kicked off of a company. I think Alex Jones actually has a lawsuit as well. I don't know how that's going or even what theory it's under, but these cases could end up being really important, especially for the tech companies going forward. So thanks everybody for coming in, and have a good one. Bye-bye.